This is our trip to downtown Savannah. Now, I've already published a video about the cemetery we visited there, but we did a lot of time walking around downtown area looking at the squares. It was beautiful. The streets here are pretty much like this because they're all tree lined. A lot of the shops are along these streets, and we found a whole lot of places like bed and breakfast and small hotels and small restaurants. On this particular street, just a little further down, is a restaurant that we found that catered and had family style meals there, and it was really good. We waited in line for a little over an hour to go there. The squares are about 23 in number in downtown Savannah, and we walked around these things several times over a couple of days, looking at them and looking at a lot of the things that were around the squares, and taking a good look at what was in the area. For example, this is a bed and breakfast that we saw. This one goes from $250 to $400 a night, depending on the season that you go there. And it was really beautiful inside, and it's right in the middle of everything in the squares downtown. Savannah has a lot of history here, and so there are a lot of churches and things around these squares as well. So we just walked around and we looked, and we stopped at the shops, and we stopped at cafes to eat, and a lot of other places, including this church. We saw this church downtown. It's an old one, and it had a lot of beautiful stained glass windows, and they have a lot of events that go on down here. I think it was St. John's or St. James, I forget which, but this had a man in here that was showing people around, and he would answer your questions for you, and it had a beautiful organ. If you remember the beginning of Forrest Gump, a feather dropped down from the top of this building up here. You can see the spire up there, and it floated down. And if you look at this sign here, you can see this is where the park bench was that Forrest Gump sat on Chippewa Square. So that was kind of cool to see that. Downtown, we walked around stores. This is like the main drag, and it went on for several blocks and just had a lot of stores. We went here before we went over to the Riverfront and had lunch. We sat at the Riverfront, and we had lunch outdoors at this place. It was really nice. It was a little windy out and a little chilly, but they had heaters on for us. And we watched these cargo ships come by, several of them, very close to where we were eating, and we were able to sit there and eat outside and see the river and see the ships. That was pretty nice too. After lunch, Lee and I went off and looked around the city market. There's a few blocks of little shops like this. I was able to get find some ice cream there. Lee found a snack, and we walked around here and just looked at a lot of these little tiny shops. And it gets a lot busier than this because you'll occasionally see other vendors apparently set up in the middle of this, and it gets pretty busy and pretty crowded sometimes. But we were just before St. Patrick's Day and didn't see a lot of that. So we're riding our bikes now on Tybee Island, just east of Savannah and along the coast. And we're going through all these neighborhoods. We're on our way to a place called AJ's Dockside to have lunch. I really like this bike ride, and to show you that, I wanted to show you that we were going along a street called 2nd Street. It was parallel to the main drag on the island, and it was really very residential, a lot of places for rent. I thought this place was kind of unique here. This guy had all sorts of sculptures out in his yard, like this bug, and other things that you can see here in a second. And we just drove through these streets on our bicycles and saw this. We drove all the way over from the lighthouse back to this part of the island. It was probably about 2 to 3 miles between where we started and the restaurant that we wanted to go to that was right at the end of this road here. You can see it this is about midway on the entire bike loop. We turned into this little restaurant here on the water. It's called AJ's Dockside. And we sat down and we parked our bikes over here to the right, and we sat down here and had a nice water view and had lunch here. When we were done, we went over to the beach at Tybee, and this was this was kind of cool. This guy was flying this glider up there, and he was coming pretty close to the water several times, but it was a good chance to get a picture of the beach and the picture of this guy messing around up there with his glider. So this is the beach right outside of the lighthouse on the end where we started. And we finished by looking at the lighthouse. We didn't go up inside, but this was pretty much the end of our little trip out there.